Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of professional wrestling comes one of the most dominant WWE superstars of all time, with a ferocity unmatched by any of his peers, along with a monstrous booking unequaled on nearly every level of the industry, main eventing major shows around the world whenever his number is called. We're talking about Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was born on July 12, 1977 in Webster, South Dakota. Lesnar excelled at high school sports, including football and most notably amateur wrestling. Lesnar placed third in the state championships during his senior year. Lesnar attended Bismarck, where he won the National Junior College Athletic Association Heavyweight Championship during his sophomore year. Brock later went to the University of Minnesota, where he won the Division I NCAA Heavyweight Championship and ultimately ended his amateur career as a two-time All-American. He won multiple titles during his four-year college run, ending with a record of 106-5. Brock signed with WWE in 2000 and was sent to the company's developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling. Once there, he worked for the man who would become his longtime manager and advisor, Paul Heyman. Brock's OVW class included other notable WWE names, including John Cena, Dave Bautista, Randy Orton, and Shelton Benjamin, who served as Brock's assistant wrestling coach at the University of Minnesota. Lesnar made his first WWE main roster appearance on March 16, 2002, on an episode of Monday Night Raw. He was immediately paired with Paul Heyman and was given the nickname of the Next Big Thing. Brock instantly became the buzz of the industry thanks to his strength and athleticism, both of which set him apart from much of the WWE locker room. Lesnar's aptitude for the business was apparent from the start, and he quickly became a must-see star in the company. Brock rose very quickly in the rankings as he defeated several main event powerhouses on his way to the top, including Hulk Hogan and The Rock. At age 25, Lesnar became the youngest undisputed WWE champion of all time when he won the title on August 25, 2002. Lesnar's most notable feuds during his first run came against top stars such as The Undertaker and Kurt Angle, as well as his OVW classmate John Cena. Brock also feuded with Bill Goldberg, who was his last WWE opponent in 2004. Brock left the company to pursue other interests, including a run in New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he became the IWGP Heavyweight Champion. Lesnar continued to compete in Japan until 2007, then left the business altogether. Lesnar entered the world of MMA in 2008 and became the UFC Heavyweight Champion on November 15th of the same year. Brock later came back to WWE in 2012, and though he's fought in the UFC since he returned, he continues to main event in Vince McMahon's company. He's a 5-time WWE Champion, a 3-time Universal Champion, and a future Hall of Famer. Lesnar is both loved and hated, but he's also respected as one of the most bankable marquee stars the industry has ever known. And that's the lowdown on Brock Lesnar. The word phenom has been tossed around a lot in the business of pro wrestling over the past decade plus, I would say. I mean, you say the word phenom, you're automatically talking about The Undertaker, because it's, that company coined that for him, and it makes perfect sense, and I'm okay with that. The phenomenal AJ Styles. I mean, if I had to think of two guys that word applies to, I don't know of anybody else I could think of besides Taker and AJ. But if you want to talk about phenom in the purest sense of the word, maybe The Rock, I would say perhaps Stone Cold, someone that transcends the business, someone that could be looked at from outside of the squared circle, and your regular everyday person would see them and say, oh, I know that guy, and he's this person, and now he's doing this or whatever. If you want to use phenom in that sense, I guess you can. But in the strictest sense of the word, when it comes to the business of pro wrestling, I don't know if there's ever been anybody bigger, all due respect to the dead man, if there's ever been anybody bigger than Brock Lesnar. This guy came in, basically spent 2 years with the company, left, came back years later, and did everything again as if he had never missed a beat. But when he came back, he brought a world of controversy with him because of his booking, and we'll get into that. And a whole bunch of people losing their minds over, again, how he's booked, which, again, we'll get to it, but because I got thoughts. But Phil, this idea of the phenom, of the guy that is sort of, and they call his finisher the F5. I mean, this guy's a walking natural disaster in a lot of ways, and you could really take that literally in terms of how he comes in and he wreaks havoc, and he leaves bodies broken and decimates everything, and then leaves, and then he's gone for a long time sometimes, and then he's back. It's a big topic to get into, but one I feel like it was the time had come to cover, because it seems like every time he's gone, we're sitting here going, well, wonder when Brock's coming back. Crowds are coming back. The masks are going away. It's a good time to be alive in 2021. I'm glad to see we're trying to get back some sense of normalcy. But Phil, basically this means that, Brock Lesnar, the Beast Incarnate, the next big thing, may or may not at some point be back. Maybe fall this year. What do you think, man? You think we're going to see Brock maybe at SummerSlam this year?
I think the chances of us seeing Brock have to be pretty high at this point. I think they've been waiting for something big to bring him back, and I'm sure for him, because his contract expired, he's waiting for the right money, the right deal, and I feel like the stars are kind of aligning for that to happen. I don't think outside of Becky Lynch, I don't think they'd have any other bigger return at SummerSlam than Brock. Um, and I think the chances of Brock versus Lashley match, which Lashley has been campaigning for so long,
Yeah.
I think at some point you've got to do that match, and SummerSlam would be a great place for it. And even if you don't do the match at SummerSlam, that's a good place to tease it at least.
That's always been what's been said, right? And supposedly Brock's camp has wanted it too. Supposedly they've both been very friendly with each other over the years. Don't know if we're talking about best friends or anything here, but um, they both have wanted this for a long time. But it just seemed like the timing was never there, or it wasn't right. Um, I mean, honestly, I don't know how people viewed Lashley before. I always had a certain level of respect for him, but I think it was really easy to look at Bobby Lashley and say, well, he's a Goldberg clone. He's jacked to the moon. He's got that look. He's got a monstrous personality. But he was never really booked like Brock. Like when they brought him in, he was with Booker, and he was sort of subservient to that gimmick and everything. But then, you know, Lashley's a baby face is okay. But man, this latest run with Lashley is, again, I had a certain level of respect for him, and I respected his work in TNA as well. But man, this Lashley against a returning Brock, maybe that's why it wouldn't have worked before, maybe because now it makes perfect sense. I mean, it does seem like the right time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems like the perfect time to do it. I mean, they protected Lashley a lot. Um, he doesn't get pinned a lot. I mean, even when he was United States champion, wasn't getting pinned a whole lot. So, I think it's a good time, and I think he's got a good mystique around him. I think he's got a good presentation that would make it. I think it would make it a high profile match.
Yeah, I agree with that. Just starting from the ground up here, man. Can we just talk about physically this guy? Like, what's the line that JB always uses about, if you could build a sports entertainer from the ground up, he would look exactly like Randy Orton. I mean, if you could build a pro wrestler from the ground up, I mean, Brock moves in ways that a guy that big maybe shouldn't be able to do without blowing up in the middle of it. He's scary quick, and his athleticism is off the charts. I mean, I don't know, man. I just looking at him from a distance, you're like, this guy's an absolute, for lack of a better term, beast. He's gonna freaking kill somebody. I mean, dude, his look has got to be one of the best looks on anybody we've ever seen, especially in that company.
Yeah, I think he's a good mix of everything that are the traditional aesthetics of a professional wrestler, and mixed in with like like this generation, crossover appeal because he's done MMA. Um, and man, I mean, he's got the amateur wrestling background to back it up. It's not like he's just a look. And then, like you said, he's got the athleticism. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he's been booked as a top guy for as long as he has.
Uh, do you get into like collegiate sports? Like, had you heard of this guy before?
No,
Sometimes I'll quiz you on stuff, and I have to remind myself there's a little bit of an age difference because, I mean, when Brock first came up, I was a freaking grown man and everything. So I don't know how young you were when he first came in 2002. So did you know anything about his background? Or you just kind of learned it as they brought him in?
no, I'm not a big collegiate sports guy, and I definitely am not keeping up with like collegiate wrestling or amateur wrestling. Um, so I didn't know anything about him.
I can't say that I've schooled myself tremendously on it over the years, but man, he basically untouchable from everything I've seen, everything I've read about him. He's just freaking nature. He's just one of those guys that what does they call Tanahashi once in a lifetime superstar? Is that what they call him? I think.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, I don't know, man. Is it fair to say Brock Lesnar's a once in a lifetime
Oh, for
wrestler
sure.
slash MMA guy? Good Lord.
For sure. I think he's absolutely once in a lifetime athlete. And, the fact that he's had success in MMA just shows that he's just a guy that you can slot him in places. He'll figure out a way to get the bag. Like, I mean, we're talking about a guy that has gone to Japan and finessed the bag there. He'll figure out a way to make a bag.
I got to be honest. I know we're going to be jumping around here right off the bat, man. I didn't mean to do that, but um, I'm kind of surprised he didn't make the NFL. I mean, they gave him a tryout, which is more than they had to do. And I mean, from reports coming out of the league at that time, because I'm a Vikings guy, and that was the team that he tried to get in with, and the reports were good. It's not like they were like, "Who's this guy?" I mean, you might be a wrestler, pal, but that's not what this is. I didn't hear anything negative. If there was anything negative said, I don't recall it being said. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't make it there.
Yeah, I don't know the story behind that. It just seemed like it was just kind of here again, gone thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know all the story behind it. You would think that he would do well. I'm pretty sure he did great in the combine. I mean, why wouldn't he? Um, I don't know. I don't know what ended up happening there. I know he got injured at some point, and maybe that had something to do with it. But other than that, I don't know.
That sounds right. It seems like there was something that prevented him from getting because they cut him, I guess, right before I think it was right before the season started. He got cut, which again is more than a little surprising to me. Um, but yeah, dude, like you said, it's this notion of you put him in any situation, he's good enough where he can find a way to make it work. I mean, he's just that much of a monster athlete, man. He is scary intense. I don't know has ever applied to anybody as much as it applies to freaking Brock Lesnar because he is. I don't think he gets enough credit for how good he is, and I don't think he gets enough credit for. Hey, he's old school. Like if I need to shoot, I'll shoot if I need to. Like, and spoiler alert, kids. They're not really trying to hurt each other. And anyone that goes around bragging that that's how they work, shame on them because this is about taking care of the opponent because that guy's got to work again tomorrow night. So I don't know that I've ever seen a Brock match where I'm like, oh, Brock's legitimately trying to kill someone. I mean, if you think he is, and it looks like he is, but when they get back through the curtain, whoever he just worked is good, then he did his job because he made you believe, yeah, I'm trying to kill this guy. But dude, straight up, if Brock had to shoot on someone to protect himself for whatever reason, or to teach the other guy a lesson, give him a receipt, as they say, he could totally do it. I mean, you need to be able to do that. I question sometimes, and Phil, I'm sure you've heard this conversation. How many legitimate tough guys are there in the business in 2021 as opposed to 1981? I mean, Brock's one of those guys, don't you think?
I mean, yeah, you gotta be a very tough guy, or you gotta be a very confident guy to walk in a room and think you can take this guy in a fight, looking at him from afar.
Yes, God. Um, and there's a reason why Heyman calls him the Beast and everything, and because it absolutely fits. Some nicknames just fit. No marketing team could have come up with that, and God, I hope they didn't. I'm 99% sure that it was Heyman that first called him the next big thing, and Heyman that then called him the Beast Incarnate, which leave it to Paul Heyman. We can't get too deep in the weeds, man, without talking about the what if scenario, because we're both Marvel guys. What if Heyman had never been attached to Brock Lesnar? This is a much different podcast and probably a much different career, wouldn't you think?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think a big part of his mystique and a big part of his presentation is because he's had Paul Heyman next to him. I mean, when you've got Paul coming out and cutting these fantastic promos and hyping you up, then that's a big part of, again, his presentation.
And I'm going to get your thoughts right off the bat here as we're really starting to get underway. What's your overall impression? Just to kick this thing off, man, because everybody's got a thought on Brock, but I don't know. Is it too complex to answer in one sentence, or do you have like a general vibe of how you personally feel about this guy as a wrestler, as maybe not a human being? You could throw that in if you want to, but what's your
Yeah,
general
I mean,
thoughts about him?
I am not a big fan of where he's at right now because I feel like the way that he is used, he's not used to his strengths anymore. Like I feel like it's kind of like when they kept bringing Goldberg back. It's like they have a great attraction in this guy, but he doesn't always have to be at the top of the card. And I think this idea that yes, he does because he's the biggest draw they have is kind of nonsense because you don't give anybody else a chance to establish themselves as a draw when you have him beat everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, when they have allowed some guys like Seth or even recently with Drew to beat him, they've had a little bit of success. But that's why I'm like, you've got to test the waters at this point because Brock is not a young guy anymore. Just giving him the title and you know having him go away for months at a time. How much is that really helping you in the long run? Especially when you're using this kind of character motivation of Brock doesn't like the product and that's why he's not here. Like that to me is just why. I mean, I know you think you're getting heel heat on him because of that, but it's just a little bit too much for me. Like it's silly in a sense that you're trying to sell us on a product, but you're telling us the guy that is at the top, that is your champion, doesn't like it. It, it just doesn't work to me.
Yeah, and it's your company. Why would you even advertise that? Why would you even tell everybody? Like, it never made any sense to me. It still doesn't make any sense to me. Why? Again, like you said, it's that's your champ, that's your top guy. So if it were true that he hated the business, that he hated being there, that he was only doing it for the money, he hated everybody. If all that's really true, if he really is, if all this is a shoot, and if he really is calling his own shots, if he's demanding, hey, I only work with veterans, you put anybody else in front of me, I'm gonna kill him. If all that was true, why the hell would you tell everybody? Why would you? Why would you advertise? Wasn't that something that you think Vince would want to keep behind closed doors and try to talk it down and cool down the situation? I mean, they put it out there so outlandishly that it seems almost impossible for anyone to buy it. But Phil, they buy it all the time. People fall for this Brock Lesnar line, hook, line, and sinker. It's insane to me, man.
I mean, well, you've got stuff like him coming backstage and throwing the title at Vince Gorilla.
Right.
Uh, so I mean, you've got stuff to base this on, and some people will buy into it because he is a money guy. I mean, we know the stories from New Japan, and if you don't know the stories from New Japan, feel free to do your research on that and him basically, taking the title home and not bringing it back because he felt like he wasn't paid what he was worth in New Japan. There was a whole fiasco on that where they had to create an entirely new world title because he wouldn't bring it back. Um,
Jeez.
So I mean, there's history behind it to believe it. But to me, even if he does feel that way, I just don't think it gives him the kind of heat that they think it does. It just I I don't know. I just don't think that it works. But hey, I mean, if it gets people to boo him, I guess they think any reaction is a good reaction, as they will always say. But for me, it just doesn't work, and I just think the the way they use Brock has become very formulaic for me.
Yeah. So okay. So I have a two-parter here for you. Number one, it's a statement and a question. The statement is, um, you hear some people say no such thing as bad heat. It's almost like no such thing as bad publicity. I disagree with that. I think there's been a lot of cases through the years, especially from this company, of notoriously bad heat, stuff that didn't have to be said, disrespectful things that didn't have to happen, weird stuff that didn't have to go down. I mean, it's just things that okay, this is dumb. Why are you running the risk of offending people? Just it's silly pro wrestling. So I disagree with that. I think there is such thing as bad heat. So here's this. There, all right, there's the statement. Here's the question: do you think this way of booking him is just bad heat? I mean, does the heat really work, or is it just is it lazy heat? Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Um, I don't know if I would say that it's bad heat. I do feel like it's a bit lazy because I feel like you could do more interesting things with Brock Lesnar as a character. And I definitely feel like you could do more interesting things with Brock Lesnar matches because I think the
Mm.
other part of it is it's one thing if you do that and then you get in a ring and he's doing like these phenomenal matches that just makes you forget all of that. Like, I mean, you say whatever you want about a heel character. If the heel character comes in and he just beats you to a pulp and you just can't beat him, like it is what it is. Like it's interesting in a sense, but the other part of it is Brock matches are basically the same as well. It's either a squash or it's a spam finisher fest, straight out of 2K, and
Right.
it's just not interesting. It's not interesting to watch to me, um, and so it's twofold. It's like I'm watching what you're giving me in his backstage segments, and what you're giving me in terms of character work, and then you're giving me matches that I don't find that interesting as well.
And there is a big difference between a Brock Lesnar versus anyone on the card match with a half dozen near falls, and Flair versus Steamboat with a half dozen near falls. Much different, big difference because there's no connection in a Brock match. I mean, Brock's had very few opponents since he returned in it was 2012, so he was gone for 8 years. Since he came back in 2012, very few, in my opinion, that fans have really connected to. The stuff with Taker, these two guys, Phil, had great chemistry. I mean, you could I mean, obviously, most people would argue. I would think that Kurt Angle was Brock's best opponent, but if there's a number
Yeah,
two, it's
probably
got
so.
to be Undertaker. Is Undertaker's best opponent? Maybe.
Uh I think it's Angle. If it's not Angle, um, you can make a case for Cena. Um,
Yeah, good call.
in terms of just rivalry, I don't know if in ring you would say it's as good as Angle, but I mean in terms of rivalry, I think he's had a great rivalry with Cena. Um, yeah, but the Taker matches were good. And I mean he's had good matches recently. I mean, some of the matches with some of the big multi-man matches that he was in, like the one with Roman and Joe and Braun, was good.
Yeah.
Some of the matches he's had with smaller guys, like that match with AJ, was good. But I mean, it's AJ. And when's the last time we've seen a bad AJ match?
Right.
Um, the match with Daniel Bryan was good as well. That every now and then he'll get a smaller guy and he'll have a good match with them. I mean, the match with Finn with Royal Rumble was good. So I mean, he's capable when they do creative things with him, and it's not just hey F5 end. Um, but they do that so often that it's just I don't know. It's just it doesn't feel interesting or original anymore.
Yeah, when he was there the first time, as I said before, it was 2 years from '02 to '04. I can't sit here and say, well, he had very competitive matches. No, he was still the next big thing. He was still the monster, and but he had more competitive matches. But
Yes.
dude, he comes back 8 years later, and it's Brock Smash. Every match is Brock Smash, and it's like, holy God, what changed? So let me get this straight. He's Mark McGuire to begin with, and then he comes back and he's Mark McGuire all jacked up, hitting home runs, and nobody can touch him. What happened? I'm not making a drug reference here, kids. It's just an example. I know how that sounded.
I don't know. And I mean, when he first came back and he had that angle with Cena where he bloodied him the hard way and it
Yeah.
looked very visual, all of that stuff was great. I mean, him coming down and F5ing Cena the night he came back, all that stuff was cool. But like I said, once he gets to the point where you're booking him as this unbeatable monster, it just was like, okay, there's a shelf life to this.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And John doesn't get enough credit. Maybe we'll do a Johnny Cena episode one day because he didn't get enough credit either. I mean, to your point, Brock comes back in 2012 and he shakes his hand and he doesn't kick him, doesn't punch him, doesn't do anything, immediately puts him on his shoulders. He mugs for the camera for like 2 seconds. John is hanging on his shoulders. On what planet would John Cena not try to get down off his shoulders when he knows the F5 is coming? So, kids, the answer to the question is yes. John is willing to do business, and John's willing to make himself lose or whatever you want to call it, or look like the butt of the joke if it serves the match. He put Lesnar over in that moment, and he could have said, "Dude, kick me or something. Don't let me just hang on your shoulders for 10 seconds," which he totally did. So again, I don't think John gets enough credit for what he's done for that company, especially against big names. But to be fair, Phil, John won that match.
Yeah.
So maybe at the end of the day he got what he wanted. I don't know. But yeah, man, he again that things changed, and it's almost like a tale of two Brocks here. It's like he comes back, no one can touch him. He's so much better. He got better with age. He got faster with age. He got tougher with age. His body never seems to give out. He always seems to be in great shape, even when he's not doing anything. I mean, he's a machine. He's an absolute machine. It's crazy to me how this guy just doesn't seem to have an off button, man. And again, scary intensity. Um, so if we said that Kurt Angle is probably his best opponent, I mean, we got to talk about some of the highlights. Maybe not Brock Lesnar highlights, but that moments that were had that Brock was a part of. I mean, Eddie Guerrero winning the championship. I mean,
Yes.
the fact that Eddie chopped down the oak tree when he took on Brock, dude, that's huge, man.
Yeah, and I mean that was a great match. One of those things that goes down as wrestling lore. Like that's just one of those greatest of all time matches or iconic moments that people always look back on. I mean, you've had other moments like that, of course, like the Angle matches, the Angle feud, the shooting star press that
Oh, wow.
turned into a meme and a scary moment. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to think of. I mean, when he first came into and he had that run King of the Ring and challenged Rock. I think that was SummerSlam, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And he freaking beat him because he beat everybody. He beat Rock. He beat Hogan. I mean, the list goes on. How many guys did he beat when he? My God, dude, that 2 year run is one for the books. If he had just had the 2 year run and disappeared, and never came back, we'd still be talking about Brock Lesnar. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, of course, that's the story of why Austin left, didn't want to lose to our guy, took his ball, and went
Yes.
home.
Yes.
But yeah, at originally, like he looked unbeatable. He was beating everyone. Um, yeah, I mean that King of the Ring. I think if you're ranking King of the Rings, he's got to be ranked pretty high. Like his run after that, and just how dominant he was. He's one of the few guys that didn't take on the goofy king gimmick and actually became what you're supposed to come out of that stipulation and become the next big thing.
He was in WWE for 126 days on the main roster before winning the WWE Championship. And I'll be honest with you, I thought it wasn't that long.
Yeah, it seemed like it happened a lot faster than that.
Yeah, no kidding.
But I mean, yeah, when
Crazy.
you've got a guy that, I mean, still is the youngest WWE champion, right?
I think he still holds the record. It was 25.
Yeah, but yeah, when you got a guy that had that look coming in the door, had that kind of athleticism, and you had the right presentation and everything around him immediately, yeah, I mean, we'll trigger.
Yeah, and I want to say that he wanted to come sooner, but I think Vince wanted him to graduate college first, but he wanted to split. Like he was ready to go. I mean, he saw dollar signs. How could he not see dollar signs? It seems an odd time to mention this other guy, but there's already comparisons, Phil, being drawn. Parker Boudreaux, I think is how you pronounce his last name.
Yeah, and this guy hasn't wrestled from what I know. Like
No,
he doesn't have any he doesn't have any of the stuff that makes Brock great in the ring. He just looks similar to Brock, so people are making this comparison. But yeah, he's not. I, I I don't think there's a good comparison. I think they favor each other. That's all it is.
I'm anxious to see him. I've not heard anything bad, but I can't sit here and say, "Oh, I'm hearing great things." I'm really not. Maybe he'll surprise us. It's almost like trying to was it the line Dusty used? Catch lightning in a bottle, or living at the end of a lightning bolt. Can't do that twice. I mean, I don't know if this kid can do a third of what Brock did. I don't know, man. That seems like a tall order.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot to live up to um, right away. I mean, and I know there are other amateur wrestlers that they've talked about bringing in that have had a connection to Brock or you know have some kind of relationship with Brock, like that kid. What's that kid's name? Gable Stevenson.
Yeah.
Um, and I think like that. Those guys are interesting, but I still have to see what Parker Bordeaux can do. I don't know. I think people are kind of jumping on the bandwagon a little bit too quick with that one.
Yeah, and it's almost like, hey, don't most of you people hate Brock and his booking and stuff? You want another one? Like what? Yeah, it's weird. It's like people are fascinated with stuff like that. I don't get it. Uh, yeah, man, and here's something else I'll throw in for you. I don't think Brock gets enough credit for selling. I
No,
think
he
he's
doesn't.
gotten exponentially better at selling over the years. I think, and let's be honest, kids, he doesn't have to sell too much, but maybe it's a sign of respect to the guys working when he really goes into that glassy eyed where he can't get back on his feet and he's stumbling around. And when he really does that, man, there's moments where you're like, man, is he really hurt? Like, did he really feel that? Did he hit his head? Dude, he didn't get enough credit for that stuff, man.
Yeah, and I think when they book him well and they book him creatively now, and not just as this monster that just no sells and just repeat suplexes and F5s, then you can actually see that because I mean that was one of the big things in the AJ match. He sold that calf crusher well.
Yeah.
Um, I mean even in the match with Seth, where Seth beat him at SummerSlam, and he sold very well outside of the ring as well. He sold pretty well for Finn as well when he took that bump on the table, and then Finn like tried to use that to advantage for most of the match. Um, but yes, usually in matches with smaller guys, he sells pretty well. But those, they're just so dependent on the same type of match with him. We don't see it that often.
Yep, yep, no doubt about it. Again, dude, I keep going back to this idea of it's two different Brocks, man. It's just that whole thing of this is the guy we saw before, and now this is the guy we see now. I'm actually rewatching the match he had with Finn, and you're right. The selling, I mean, he does his part. He definitely does his part, man. Um, he's not exactly putting anybody over. And see, there's a bone of contention. And I don't know where you stand on this. I'm going to ask you. This idea of we take a respected veteran, and I'm not saying you job him out to everybody. I'm not saying that. But Brock he's never made anyone's career. You could argue and say, well, so and so got in the ring with him and held his own. Not good enough. I don't know. I mean, off the top of my head, there's two guys I know that ended up, they ultimately won the feud. And that is Seth and Roman. That's
Yeah.
it. I can't
Well,
think
I
of a
mean,
third because he beat Angle in the end. He beat Cena in the end. He beat Goldberg in the end. Um, Orton. I can't think of anyone, Phil, besides Seth and Roman. But
well, I
dude,
mean,
Seth
you
and
could
Roman
say
were
Drew.
already made men, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say Drew because Drew.
Okay, Drew. My bad. I forgot about Drew. Yeah.
You could say Drew because he beat him at WrestleMania. But even Roman, it took him forever to beat Brock, and it just once he finally beat him, it was just like it just didn't feel as important as they wanted. It just felt like, all right, well, just get this over with because we know this is what you want to do. It just, yeah, I just don't think that they booked. I don't think they booked the feud with Roman well, and it could be the way that they were booking Roman at that time too. It just, I don't know. It didn't work. Now, I would say that he did put Seth over, but at that time they kind of squandered it because they immediately tried to put Seth in that feud with the Fiend, and it kind of ruined all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call, man. I honestly didn't think about it that way, but you were totally right. And I didn't mean to leave Drew out there. It just shows you that, the last time Brock was there was just to drop the belt to Drew, which was the WrestleMania that nobody saw because it was during the height of the pandemic. And I actually
Yeah,
forgotten about that.
yeah, and I mean, I know a lot of people like that Royal Rumble where he was the first entrant in the Rumble, and he annihilated the first 13 men or so, and then Drew finally beat him. I mean, I think that was great for Drew, but I wasn't a big fan of it. But it did work out well for Drew because it did make him look like a great baby face going into the WrestleMania match.
Very true. So I guess you could say that Brock has touched people, literally, uh, and with great force. But he's touched guys. But but I don't know, man. I keep going back to the idea of did he make anybody? Like I can sit here and say the Undertaker made guys. After Punk worked him the first time, people and even Punk would say I was a made man after that because people looked at him differently. Because he got Taker's value, he got a sign of respect. Punk didn't win the first match. He didn't win. I don't know if he won any of the matches, but the fact is that he got that rub. Taker respected him, uh, and he did it for Jeff Hardy. He's done it for other guys. I don't know if I'm sitting here trying to think of who has Brock done that for. I mean, by the time Brock gets his hands on them, they're already made men. Seth, Roman, Dean, Bryan, Finn, they're all made guys. I mean, and
Yeah,
again, I'm not suggesting they put him in the ring with a 20-year-old. He lets the guy pin him, but is there nobody Phil on the way to being a made guy that maybe he could give the rub to along the way?
yeah. I mean, I just think it looks weird because he came in, and all of the biggest stars outside of Austin in Attitude Era did it for him,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he hasn't really done it for anybody else. Um, yeah, it's weird. I mean, the closest you can get is Drew, but Drew, like I said, I mean, Drew wasn't minted already like Rollins was or Roman, but I feel like we already knew that he was a chosen guy before that. That was his whole thing, his first run in the company.
Yeah. Yeah, he was already established. He wasn't world champion material going into that, obviously, but he was already established as a guy who, with the right booking could get there. I don't want to get too hung up on that stuff, man, but things like that get in my head sometimes, and I just sit back and think, is it Brock? Is it them? I mean, I would submit that it's Vince not wanting Brock to be in that role. Is that what we're talking about here? Maybe.
I think it's them because I don't think it's the thing where Brock doesn't want to put anybody over. He's put several guys over at this point. I just think that it's just the way that they have chosen to use him. I mean, you can look at Braun Strowman as a clear example. Like, man, they could have given Braun the win over Brock at what was that, one of those Saudi shows,
Yeah.
and they just decided not to. It was weird.
And Braun was pretty hot then too. I mean, why not? Unless Brock saw something that, there was that match. Maybe it in Saudi where Brock tagged him for real. Because remember that? Because I think
Was that the Saudi match? I think that was another match.
maybe it was. Because I think Braun stiffed him first, and
Yeah,
Brock paid him back, man.
yeah, that was funny.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's prime example of why he's gotten that stigma from some people, because there are guys that I feel should have beaten him, and they just didn't give them the win. Like, I still say that Joe should have beat him at Great Balls of Fire. Like, that was one of the biggest mistakes
Oh,
they made
man.
with Brock's reign.
Agreed.
Like, I definitely think like that feud was great. I had never seen anybody do that to Brock. I mean, just like legitimately choke him out. And all the stuff he did with Heyman was great. I thought that was the perfect chance to make Joe champion.
Yeah. Totally agree. Worst name pay-per-view ever. Horrible.
and that graphic with it that looked
Oh,
horrible.
So bad. Let's hope they never revisit that. And I'm a fan of old school rock and roll, but Jerry Lee Lewis in the 2000s, what are we doing here, Vince? Geez, come on.
I'm a fan of those like um smaller pay-per-views with like an odd name. Like, I'm fine with that, but I
In Your
don't
House
need.
and all that.
Yeah, but we don't need to see flaming testicles. Like, no.
You can hear Vince going, look at it. It looks like balls, pal. I mean, he just, we've always heard he's a huge fan of toilet humor. That's his whole shtick. Like, he cracks up at jokes that would make a 16-year-old blush. And you're like, you're a grown man. You're still laughing over this? Come on.
Yeah, I could definitely see him just going Great Balls of Fire and then looking at that little. They'll never get it.
Yeah. I love it. And they're all going, it's great, boss. And in their heads, they're going, Jesus, man, this guy.
Come on. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of why some people might look at him that way, because there are definitely guys that he beat that he maybe shouldn't have, or maybe he could have given someone a rub at a point that they didn't do it.
And I'm just wrapping up now with that Finn match. That was a good match. I'm gonna be straight with you. I've forgotten how good it was. I mean, he sold for Finn. He really sold for Finn, dude. Like, he took the corner of that table and they started bringing up the diverticulitis stuff, and he sold it like crazy all the way to the end.
I enjoyed that match, and Finn has always said that's one of his favorite WWE matches. I hope we get a rematch of that match one day. That'd be cool.
Put Finn over this time. It won't happen, but
yeah, I mean, if he wants to come back as like the Demon and do that match, I think there's money there.
I thought that they left money on the table by it not being the Demon. I think that all right, so I've opined on this in podcasts from years ago and in columns over the years. Let's talk a sec about Lesnar, the character, not just the Beast, not just the athlete and the MMA guy, and we'll get there, but the character. The only thing that has ever rattled Brock Lesnar, the character, is the supernatural gimmick. It's the only thing that's ever rattled him. The empty coffin, the fire, the smoke. He's been physically shaken. I mean, it's in character, kids, but play along. It's the only thing that's ever thrown him off his game. not the mind games, not the Taker can make the lights go up and down, but again, empty coffin, lightning, all that stuff. Finn Balor dressed as the demon crawling down the ramp. I can envision Lesnar in the ring looking back and forth at Heyman like, wait a minute. I didn't sign up for this. What's this? I mean, dude, I think that was serious money left on the table with that.
Yeah, I think maybe they were possibly thinking, okay, this gives us a way to revisit the match later. But I mean, if you're making it his gimmick that's his pay per view thing, and especially because the way he lost the Universal title and everybody wanted him to regain it, I don't know. I just felt like they could have done better with that.
And, I put over this match, and you did too. Heck, Finn did. And then after the bell, he goes back and attacks Finn again. And obviously, Balor's not going to go along with anything that he's not going to go along with. But again, and I feel I know this is probably not Brock or Finn. This is the guys booking the match or Vince himself saying, "You got to really heal out, pal." I don't know. It seems unnecessary, but hey, it's just semantics on my part, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. I picked this stuff apart too much, but no, I just feel like again the whole supernatural Finn is the demon. Suddenly he's just staring a hole through him. He's doing that thing where he's crouching in the corner, and Brock's looking at him like, "Why isn't he getting up? What's going on?" Like that to me is entertainment. That to me is telling a story. They could play it up for the first time. I don't think I've ever seen Brock Lesnar legit worried about a match. He acts like he doesn't want to be in the ring right now. What's going on? I mean that to me would be cool. But like we said, maybe another time. Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. I got to stick this in real quick because I have to. The music. Dude, come on. Shut up. I love his music. It's timeless. It's so cool, man. I think it's one of the best themes that's ever been done for anybody in that company.
Yeah, I really like his theme. And I think him coming out and doing what is basically called Brock hopping at this point. And,
yes.
Getting ready, and then he jumps into his pyro. It always looks cool. Even if you're not always excited to see him, like when his music hit, it sounds great every time. Like it's so. I mean, I don't know. You can't go wrong with his music.
Yeah, I call it the bounce when he stands up there and bounces, and it's funny because they took the pyro away for a while. The stage pyro didn't happen. Like usually, he'd pull back with his arms and get the stage pop, and then when he'd jump up on the ring apron, you get the fire shooting up, or the sparks. They stopped all that for a while, and it wasn't the same entrance, man. Like, how do you not give Brock Lesnar's pyro? Come on, guys.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, him coming out and doing this Brock hopping and getting amped up is still it's almost like when Goldberg used to come out. Goldberg used to do all of the shadow boxing before he walks down. It just always looks badass.
It's not Brock without it. I don't know how much of an MMA guy you are. When he split and went to do this MMA thing, I'm sure he had his critics. I'm sure a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon and say, "Oh, here's the pro wrestler, amateur champion, good for him. He failed at the NFL, he's going to fail at this." And then he won the title. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. Maybe this guy is for real. I mean, dude, were you enough of an MMA fan to keep up with him when he went to UFC?
I wasn't. I wasn't really into MMA, but I think he didn't help himself by coming out and debuting that horrendous tattoo on his chest.
If this doesn't prove, we haven't even talked about his tats. If this doesn't prove how much of a tough guy he is, the back tat from the back of his neck down to his belt, and the chest, the sword on his chest, man, crazy.
Yeah, that chest tattoo is a choice. I don't
Ha!
know.
Ha! I love how you put
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, I mean, I think he looks like what people outside of wrestling fandom would look at and go, "Oh, here goes one of these wrestlers,
Yeah.
over bloated up guy, roided up. He can't actually go. He's gonna lose. He's gonna get embarrassed in here." It's like, no, this guy's like big. He actually has legitimate amateur wrestling chops. And if this guy's coming at you and he's doing strikes, I don't want to. No, no.
No.
I mean, he's intimidating as hell. No matter what you think of this guy. Like,
Yes.
so yeah,
Yeah. I don't want him coming at me. Are you kidding
no,
me? Forget that. I'm going the other way. I will go as fast as my legs can carry me in the other direction. Just imagine if he could have done this stuff when he was collegiate wrestling. If collegiate wrestling or MMA, he'd have killed 10 people. Like, legit killed them. Like, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm watching him right now against Overeem. And yeah, you can tell the respect he's getting in this cage because Overeem's not going straight in. Like, he's hesitant. He's trying to find his spots, pick his spots. Like, that's respect to me too. Like, I'm going to rush in and show this guy something, but nah. Now,
yeah,
to be honest, I think Brock loses this. I'm watching I don't even know
yeah.
what this fight
Now,
was.
correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he start doing the Chimera lock when he came back from MMA?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that just added so much to him. Like, I think there's something about a good heel wrestler that has a good match style and can actually like do all the physicality on the mat and make you tap out. It's just interesting to watch. I think that's part of what made Kurt Angle as a heel so interesting to watch because he could like
Mm.
legitimately tap you out. Like,
I mean, the whole idea of the crossover thing, man. The whole idea of pro wrestlers crossing over, the whole idea of MMA guys crossing over. I mean, it didn't start with Brock. It started with Ken Shamrock. Ken
yes,
Shamrock, Dan the Beast Severin, Tank Abbott. I know I'm Tito Ortiz, right? Guys have crossed over before. Chuck Liddell, I think, didn't Chuck Liddell do something pro wrestling related at some point?
I'm not
Maybe I'm
sure on
wrong.
Chuck Liddell, but yeah, definitely everybody else you named. I mean, Ken Shamrock is definitely the first crossover guy.
I mean, it's Shamrock not left when he did because JR has told the story for years that Shamrock was going to be the next guy, that they had big plans for him, that they had him where they had him, and he was learning and getting better and better and better, and he was such a natural at this. And then supposedly, man, it was in the works. It was on paper. This guy's going to be in the top two, top three, maybe the top. I mean, they had serious plans for him, and then he's like, I want to go back. I miss it. I want to go back and do this again. And he split. And it's like, man, there again, Phil, had we, had he stuck around, maybe we wouldn't be having a Brock Lesnar conversation to the degree we're having it today because he was doing it first. I mean, crazy when you
Yeah,
think about it.
I mean, the fact that we never got a Brock Shamrock match is a
Oh,
disservice.
it's a travesty.
Like we definitely should have gotten that match.
Yeah, real travesty. Yeah, but Shamrock was the first. Brock kicked the door down off the hinges. We saw Batista crossover. Saw CM Punk crossover. We've seen their guys cross over into the business. I mean, Ronda Rousey. It's still going on. It's just, the doors are wide open now, and
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that was
yeah,
the whole Inoki thing at one point when they were doing all their MMA guys they were trying to bring in, and it didn't work. Like, I mean, now of course Brock was already a wrestler that crossed over to MMA and back, but
true.
um, yeah, I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the guy in question, but I think Brock Lesnar's proven he can do just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, the fact that Brock was able to cross over and do well there and come back here is just it's just an implication of just how good Brock is.
And I've never believed that he or Bill, either one, got a fair shake at WrestleMania that year. I just don't think that it was WrestleMania 20, I think, right? Um, I don't think they got a fair shake because, of course, by that time, fans are real smart.
Yeah,
Everybody knows everything. The internet's a thing, and everybody's talking about everybody. So everybody knows this is probably their last match because both these guys are gone. And so, well, hey, they're splitting. Let's just crap on it. I've never understood. But Phil, it's a WWE. You've been to a lot of shows like I have. There's nothing like a WWE crowd. It's not the same crowd at the indie show, not the same crowd at AEW show. They have to be part of the show. They got to chant. They got to stand up and crack silly jokes. They got to put all the attention on them. I mean, I don't think they got a fair shake for that match. There was a lot their last match for both guys for a while, right?
yeah. Well, I think it was partially the way they used Goldberg up to that point. I think they brought Goldberg in a little bit later than he should have came.
Yeah.
And, they didn't really book any of the WCW guys as well as they could have when they first came over. So that didn't help. It's like, yeah, you're bringing in a guy and they already know that both these guys are going to be gone. And one of these guys, the fans don't, at least a part of your fan base doesn't really know why they care about him. Like, that's just what it is. He's not one of their guys.
But fast forward years later when he comes back in 2016,
Yeah.
and dude, they blew the roof off the building for him, and everywhere he went, he got a massive pop. And it's almost like the younger fans grew up in those years and realized, hey, this guy's he's a legend. Like talking about Goldberg, and suddenly he's a favorite, and they call him legend and icon, all this other stuff. People are like, heck yeah, he is. I'm thinking, boy, you weren't that friendly to him back in 2004 when you boot him out of the building with Brock, man. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was just a mix of both things that kind of could see the writing on the wall that both of them were leaving. And it just, I don't think that he enjoyed his first run. I think he'll tell you that himself.
Oh yeah.
And I just don't think that they used him well. So, I think it was great that he got a second chance with a WWE run, and like he got to enjoy it more, and he got to have his kid with him and have a good time with it. Because, I mean, yeah, if it would have just ended on that note, it would have been pretty sour taste in his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, and he admitted that he hated that first run. Well, losing the title to Triple H might do that to you. Uh,
Yeah,
just
everybody's
saying,
got to lose to the golden shovel, man.
dude. He's beat everybody. He's pinned everyone. I don't think who is he not pinned? I mean, he comes out of retirement and pins people. I'm like, what?
Every time I hear that, it reminds me of the Punk
Yes.
Punk podcast. Tell me the guy doesn't like me, but I mean, he came all the way out of retirement just to beat me. Oh no!
And Punk's reaction on the pod where he goes, he did that, didn't he? Like he hadn't even thought about it. Like he hadn't even realized. Oh wait a minute, he did do that. Yeah, man, he pins everybody. Crazy. Yeah, man. I'll be straight with you. I don't. From a physical standpoint, in terms of what each guy's capable of, how each guy works, what each guy's comfortable doing, the explosiveness, the athleticism. Goldberg doesn't get enough credit for his athleticism. He had a career in the NFL. I mean, this guy tore his abdomen. A huge, heinous, I think it was a football injury. He said it was the worst pain he ever felt in his life. I'm thinking, he tore his, dude, I can't even imagine excruciating. And I mean, I saw Goldberg in WCW doing a standing backflip and land on his feet, for crying out loud. I mean, it seems like they're two sides of the same coin, these two guys, man. I mean, we've seen stuff from them in the last several years that got over and was popular and stuff. But man, can you imagine if these guys had locked up in their prime against each other? My God. I mean, if Goldberg was Goldberg there in 2002, I don't know that he was. I think he came in 03, I think. I mean, it wasn't too far off, I don't guess, but man, I guess I'm just trying to picture in my head fantasy book this where the environment would have been better. But man, it seems like they're just both so similar and maybe of the same mindset. Let's just go in there and kill it. Let's just whatever it takes, man up. Because it's like I imagine being in both those guys being in the ring together, they're bruised and it's hard to get out of bed the next morning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The funny thing about that is, to me, well, not even to me. I don't even think this is a. I don't even think this is like a subjective opinion. Like, I, I clearly Goldberg cannot do what Brock does in ring.
Right,
Go
right, right.
like Brock is a better wrestler, and so again, that's what makes it so weird to me that they've tried to make him into this Goldberg esque monster where he comes out and does like 2 or 3 moves and beats everybody. It's like, but he's so much better than that.
Yeah.
So why are you using him that way?
It's an excellent point. And to that point, we mentioned the Daniel Bryan match earlier. Bryan may have been the first one since Kurt Angle that you go back and watch that match before it even starts, the expression on Daniel's face. And you know, I know it's a lot of character and it's a lot of we got to do this to tell the story. You know, I don't see Daniel Bryan sweating that match. Now maybe he was. Maybe the truth is he'll come out if maybe he's already done it and said, "Oh man, I was anxious, I was nervous." Dude, Daniel could shoot on Brock. I'm firmly of the firm belief he could have cinched him up if he had to, for whatever weird reason. If he had to go into business for himself, if Brock decided got a little carried away and potatoed him a couple of times, Daniel could have cinched him up and Brock wouldn't have been able to get up off the mat. I firmly believe that. I think Daniel's that good and he's that good of a shooter. You put Daniel Bryan in the mid 70s NWA as a shooter, and brother, he could hold his own, I believe. But I
Yeah,
think it was the first time for me personally, Phil, that I saw a guy that just wasn't sweating Brock at all. You know what I mean?
yeah, I absolutely love that match. That's like right after Bryant turned heel and he was doing all of the facial expressions and stuff in the ring, and
Yeah.
like he hit that comeback like towards the middle of the match, and it really looked like he could win. Um, and I mean, he wouldn't have gained anything because it was champion versus champion match, but still, it just man, that was such a good match.
Yeah, it was. The whole ruthless aggression thing with Brock. I mean, you could say that certain superstars typified certain eras. I mean, you'd say Stone Cold's era was the Attitude Era, along with a lot of others, but he was the top guy. I mean, ruthless aggression doesn't happen without John Cena and Brock Lesnar. I don't think.
No, no, I think if anybody is the face of the ruthless aggression era, it's Cena. Like it was his whole tagline at one point.
Yeah. I mean, 2 years in, you know, sometimes, dude, we play this game of what if, what could have been, all this other stuff. If he hadn't split, I don't know, man. He beat everybody in the first 2 years. I mean, would he have just gotten stale? Would people have just gotten tired of seeing him? I mean, I don't know if we expect him to leave for 8 years, but if he had left for a year or so and then come back fresh, Lord knows what he could have done. But dude, back to the point, he had pinned everybody. Everybody did the job to him. Here's something to hit you with. Um, did it make all those jobs any less valid or any less important because he split after 2 years? Like we all we put forth this monumental effort to get this freak of nature over. Everybody did their part. The guys that jobbed to him, the veterans that jobbed to him that didn't have to do it, the commentators, the money, the promos, the camera shots, Paul Heyman exhaustingly working behind the scenes to help this guy. And then 2 years he's gone. Dude, wasn't that just a huge amount of time, effort, and money for 2 years? Was it worth it?
I think it worked out in the long run because I mean, when he came back, every time you give wrestling fans a chance to forget and you just give them something new and shiny,
Yeah.
he got a huge pop when he got back.
Very true.
Um, but just giving us time to miss him. And so I don't think it did. I think it cemented him during that time as a massive star, and I don't think he'd be considered the draw he was when he came back if they didn't do that.
If they didn't have the foundation already laid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll buy that. I'll buy that. So, all right, Phil, you got a promotion. You are a booker for WWE. Okay. Have fun with the job. It may not last long. Hopefully, you don't get Bischoffed. Okay. I'm just saying. But you're the man now, Phil. And Brock's coming back in July. So I want you to book him for the next year. You don't have to give me shows, but if you're starting with Lashley, after Lashley, what comes after that? Who would you like to see this guy either make or have a dream feud or maybe revisit something that he's never done before?
Um. Okay. Uh. Okay. So if he comes back by SummerSlam, I think you could have whoever you could. No, I would say book the Bobby versus Lesnar match for SummerSlam,
Mm-hmm.
and then I almost hate to say it because I hate to do it to Lashley, but I mean he's been champion since last year. He's been well, not last year. He's been champion since right before WrestleMania. I would have him beat Lashley. Then you can book the rematch and do all the cool stuff around it for the up to the next pay per view. And then everything they've been doing with Kofi, you can keep that stuff simmering. He never got his rematch against Brock. You can keep that simmering and go all the way into January and have Kofi win the Rumble and have Brock still beating everybody all the way up through Rumble. And that way you can book Kofi versus Brock at Mania. Now, I know that sounds crazy because it's like, well, you booked that match so poorly before and you have no believability in this match now because now you're looking at it, it's like, okay, well, he's just gonna stomp Kofi out. Like, it's just not gonna be a good match. But I think there's a good story you can tell there going into WrestleMania. And I think if you do it correctly and you make this run with Brock matter, you do different things with him other than him just doing the same kind of matches, I think there's an interesting way to do it. And I think you can do a similar match to some of those other matches I said earlier with like the Finns and AJ and have Kofi go into this match and maybe not even win, but have him make a statement that he went the distance with Brock. Because I think that's all that a lot of fans of Kofi wanted. Nobody really expected him to win that match. But at least let him go the distance because his whole character up to that point was that he was determined and he wouldn't take no for an answer. And to just have him get beat like that and then just go away, it just seemed like it just defeated the entire purpose of everything that got him to that point.
How did we get an hour into this and not mention the horrendous booking of him beating Kofi in, wasn't it under a minute? I think.
Yeah, within seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was horrible. I hated it. I wasn't at home when it happened because I knew he was gonna lose, and I am a huge Kofi fan. I just knew he was gonna lose, so I was like, well, whatever. I went out to dinner that night, so I came back and I saw it, and I was just like, of course. And it just to do all of that to build to that Velasquez match that was nothing. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was terrible. So I think first of all that does two things. I've always wanted to see Kofi win a Royal Rumble because he's done so much for the Royal Rumble match with all of his escapes and everything. He's always been one of the most exciting guy to watch coming into a Royal Rumble. So I
Yeah.
think he needs to win one before his career is over. And to win one and face Brock at WrestleMania and it be like this immovable force, like I said, again, even if he doesn't win that, I feel like it still sets him up for another WrestleMania moment.
And I think I'm on board with all that. I'm even on board with Kofi winning.
Oh yeah, I
However,
mean, I'm never gonna say I don't want him to win. I'm always gonna root for him.
but dude, I would be concerned because this is the same company that Hound is booking the first time as champ, and it ended in a whimper. Like, you know what it is? Here's the fact, Phil, and and you know what? This is the truth. Until, all right, so the title win's probably going to happen again, but they're going to do a Seth Rollins and they're going to do a Daniel Bryan and they're going to do back in the day, a Christian. He's going to turn heel, and it's going to be a smarmy sort of gimmick that's it's going to get over, but it's going to be like people can be talking about, oh man, Kofi's doing the best work of his career right now. I mean,
uh,
and then he'll
yeah,
get the run. I'm telling you, I think that's where they're heading with this.
I hope not. Because to me, I've heard Kofi say it, and I've heard other people say it. He's one of the best baby faces that they've had in a long time. Like they
I
compare
agree.
him to Steamboat, like that he's a once in a generation baby face.
Yep.
And I feel like he just works better as a baby face. Like so, why turn him heel at this point? Um, an alternate version of that is you could have Kofi win the Money in the Bank and hold on to the Money in the Bank briefcase
Ooh.
until Brock comes back, and right after he wins that title, cashes it in.
More plausible.
Kofi's never won a Money in the Bank briefcase, and that's another match where I feel like he put that match on the map. He's
Yeah.
done some fantastic things in the Money in the Bank match, but he's never won it.
Yeah.
So him holding on to the briefcase and maybe Brock having this, crazy match with Bobby Lashley that goes the distance or something like that, and Lashley really puts him nearly beats him, and then at the end of it, Kofi comes in and cashes in. I love that.
And I was watching some old NWA recently because I still watch old NWA. And this is straying away from the Kofi talk from just a sec here, but I saw the Warlord. Now, granted, kids, if you don't know who the Warlord is, go look him up. He's no Brock Lesnar. I get it. Don't anybody throw any hate my way. But like, you didn't see Dusty taking this guy and booking him like, oh, let me tell you something. He's gonna kill everybody. And even Bubba Rogers, who Dusty was very high on. Oh, we're just gonna have him kill everybody. I mean, dude, there was a hierarchy. There was a pecking order. There was a chain of command. There was a roster. There was a totem pole. And it was like, no, you're here, we're here, and that guy's there. And if we see enough in you and you can get yourself over, we'll get you to that point. But like in the meantime, you have to earn your keep.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about Brock's work in OVW where he did earn his keep. But dude, I mean, and I'm not asking, oh, did Brock earn it? I'm not suggesting that. But man, the moment, like we said at the beginning of the show, the moment they saw him, it's like, oh my God, that's it. Everyone's going to lose to him. Give him the belt. Do it right now. I mean, I get it. Like you said, how do you not give it to him? But they didn't do that for Lashley. They didn't do that for other guys that had amazing bodies and had athleticism. Look how long it took them to give anything to Mark Henry besides a goofball sexual chocolate song. And I love the gimmick, but still. I mean, but Brock steps in. Oh, no, that's it. Give it to him. Ding, ding, you're the champion. Here you go. Here's all the money. Back the truck up. Here's more money. Hey, Brock, listen, Brock, we made a decision. We don't pay you enough. Here's even more money.
Oh
I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, definitely. They wouldn't do this for anyone else. The way that they've put things on hold for the guy, the way that they paid him more than the rest of their roster, and they've done all these other things for him that they definitely would not do for anyone else. Absolutely, you're right. Um, but I think that's part of why making him this character that hates the product is just so it just doesn't work, man. It's just so demoralizing to fans watching it. Like you already know what it is. You already hear things um, like when Mox was saying what he was saying when he was there about how he didn't want to do very many things in their match, and I mean, you've
yeah,
seen other guys that are like, he just doesn't want to do anything, and you can take from that he is hard to work with, or that you know he's lazy or whatever else. But I think that's just because he's allowed to be that. He doesn't have to do anything different. So why would he? If he knows that he can come out there and do the greatest hits and still make the same money, he's not going to do anything different.
Right. Greatest hits. Great way to put it. Absolutely. 100% right. He's going to play his greatest hits. So when Austin, flashbacking for a second, when Austin said, nope, not doing it. I'm not going to lose to Brock on SmackDown. You people have lost your minds. We didn't advertise this match. It's a TV match. You build it up to a major pay-per-view. We've got time to build the story and tell the story. Sure, I'll do the job. And then he takes a walk. Are you on his side at that time or no?
Well, I mean, I wasn't in the know at that time. I just knew he was on TV.
Right,
So
right.
when I learned about it later, I was just kind of like, oh, okay. I don't know if I was on his side because the thing is, other guys have other guys that were as I don't well, I was gonna say as big of stars, but there was no bigger star than Austin at the time.
Right, right.
But there were other guys that could have taken the same kind of offense, and that's why you got to give The Rock a lot of credit because The Rock, at the height of his popularity, didn't need to give Brock the rub. He didn't. I mean, and you can argue that he had taken losses to guys that he shouldn't have taken losses. There are several Triple H matches that Brock shouldn't have lost. There are other matches that he just shouldn't have lost, but it is what it is. And he was willing to give Brock that. So I don't know if I'd say I side with Austin. It just makes me respect Rock even more.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I see Austin's point. I've kind of always been in Austin's camp on this one, and it's no disrespect to Brock, but to the point you just made about people help Austin. The first time Austin faced Brett won, and Brett won some of
Yeah.
those matches. He won the first how many times they faced each other because he was supposed to, because he was the guy, and Austin knew that and had no problem with it. But the first time they wanted Austin and Brock to lay hands on each other, Brock's going to win, and Austin's been your money man for how many years? Like, no, it was the wrong call. And I don't know if it's enough to, I'm leaving, I'm never coming back. I mean, that seems a bit much, but I'm not in his head at that time. Maybe I would have been so offended, be like, you know what? I've been your top earner. And it's partly because of me that the other company's gone now. Like, and this is what you're going to have me do? I don't know. But to your point earlier, this adds to the mystique of Brock Lesnar, where it's like, look, they pushed him before its time, and he never cared about this the way Austin cared about it, and this was Austin's whole life, and Brock just wanted to get paid. And here's proof: he left after 2 years, and then layers and layers. Brock's like a huge onion, a massive onion. Like there's a lot of layers to that story, man. A lot of layers. When his contract came up with WWE, as is the case often all the time now in this modern era of the pro wrestling biz, dude, there was AEW talk starting. And it probably was not serious. It probably was from nobody inside that company. But I thought, if there's one man on the planet that's got enough money to throw up Brock Lesnar and not name Vince McMahon and not from UFC, not Dana White, dude, it's Tony Khan. Is there a world in which, and it's probably too late now, it's probably there are talks have probably already been had with Vince again. Is there a world where we see Brock Lesnar on Dynamite one day?
I don't know if he fits what AEW is. I mean, of course, anybody that could get Brock would take him. But because to me, the thing is, he would stand out immediately because he's so much bigger than anybody on that roster.
Yeah.
I mean, he's bigger than most people on most rosters. I mean, but the AEW has made its lane by not being this land of giants, and they don't rely on any of the typical wrestling aesthetics. I mean, the fact that they are grooming Orange Cassidy into a main eventer tells you that. I mean, the fact that they've made Darby into such a big star straight away. I mean, even Omega is not a big guy. So I just don't know. Like unless you're gonna shoot him to the top of the card immediately there, I'm not sure how that works. And if you shoot him to the top of that card, like I feel like you run the risk of alienating that fan base because they clearly aren't the same guys that are tuning in to watch what WWE is going to give you with Brock. So
Yeah.
then what do you do with him if you don't put him at the top of your card and make him champion?
All right, so there's a train of thought there. On one hand, you're 100% right. How do you have the guy named Brock Lesnar, who's actually Brock Lesnar? It's not a ripoff. It's not a lookalike. It's not a Ryback. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Say no more. Say no more. I'm sorry, but it was flat out Goldberg / Brock Lesnar deal. That's how I feel. But how do you have the Brock Lesnar and not immediately put him in the main event? Not immediately put him with the title? Um, yeah, but the other train of thought says, yeah, but we're paying the guy. And if what you and I have said about this guy and what a lot of other people said about this guy is true, if he's there to do business, then maybe he's there not in a world title capacity, but maybe he's there because there's someone on that roster that intrigues him. A situation that, hey, I think that would be fun. How much money's in it? Oh, yeah, I think I can do that. Is there anybody on that roster that's not in world title contention right now that would even make sense, do you think? Or would it have to be world title or nothing?
Hmm. I mean, it would be cool to see him in a match with Omega, but I'm just not sure what that match would even look like because we're so used to Omega wrestling a certain style and going these like um, long matches, and I'm not sure Brock is suited for that kind of match. I
Yeah.
mean, it would be an interesting matchup just to see them in a ring together, but in terms of what that match would actually look like and how you would be able to make it work, I don't know. Hmm. I mean, I don't feel like we ever got a Miro versus Brock match, and I think there's interest in doing
Ooh,
that.
interesting.
And I mean, there's a way to tell a story of how Miro was never taken seriously as a draw or a world champion with WWE like he should have been. And, getting to prove himself against someone like Brock would be cool. Um, who else on that card? I mean,
You think of guys like Wardlow, Luchasaurus, but they're not. No disrespect to them, but they're not. Cody. I mean, who else but Cody or
yeah,
Jericho?
Cody would be a good one.
Yeah.
Because he's such a WWE guy. When I mean Brock, and so putting him against Cody and telling that story would be interesting. Um, I'm just trying to think who else. I mean,
It
uh,
does kind of.
rematch a rematch with Mox would be interesting as well.
Oh, shut up! Wow, I'm here for that. I'm totally here for that because that match doesn't end the way it ended in WWE. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and with some creativity and giving Mox the chance to do things he wants to do in that match. Of course, if Brock wants to do it, that could be interesting. Especially after all the lore of that match and the Stone Cold podcast and all that stuff that happened afterwards. Revisiting that match with that story would be interesting.
And this is what we call fantasy booking, kids, because we'll probably never see the light of day with Brock Lesnar setting foot in someone else's ring. Um, you never say for sure, Phil, but because anything's possible. But I just don't. I personally don't think I see it happening. So he goes and he goes to go back to UFC, back to MMA. He fails the drug test, I think. Um, isn't that what happened? He failed the drug test, I think.
Yeah, I remember there was some stuff with like some drug stuff. I don't know. I don't remember all the specifics.
Yeah. And he got himself in fighting shape, which means he doesn't have the traps that go up to his ears anymore. And so the match, I'm just saying, so the match with Brian, the traps are gone. And he's still big, but he's not like Brock Lesnar kind of big. He's just, stout. And it's like you can tell when he's training for fighting because there's show muscles in pro wrestling and there's necessary muscles in MMA. And they're two totally different things. And cardio is huge in pro wrestling. That's obvious, but it's equally as important in MMA because you're trying to outlast the other guy. So I find it interesting. Watching his matches is like a shock to the system if you're not prepared. If you skip years in between or months in between, sometimes it's a different thing. Are we looking at Brock Lesnar ever going back to UFC and making a full-time run again, or do you think maybe he's put that behind him?
Uh, I know he showed interest in going to do MMA again. I'm not sure if we ever see that again though. Like, I mean, I there's probably money in it, but I'm just not sure. I don't. I'm not sure on that one. Yeah, I don't know. But I'm not the biggest MMA guy, so I might not be the right guy to ask on that.
Well, I
Maybe
mean,
there's some people that want to see it, but I don't know.
to be fair, I don't think I've ever give it a legit shot like maybe I should or could have. I'm not anti MMA. I've watched a little bit here and there, but not enough to be able to sit here and have an intelligent conversation about it. Um,
Oh yeah, how did we both skip over Brian Cage? Like Brian Cage and
Brian Cage.
Brock in a match would be crazy. I mean, just physically, those two guys in a ring together is insane.
Well,
I
I mean,
mean,
Tessa Blanchard pinned Brian Cage, so I mean, what can Brock do against him?
yeah, I mean, you could do something cool with that match. I mean, in terms of a guy that I know that will bump like crazy for him, and you can do a lot of underdog stuff in that match.
Yeah.
Brock versus Darby would also be interesting.
Oh God, Darby may not make it out alive, and because it would be Darby's fault, not Brock's. Like Darby, be like, I got this great idea. I want you to come up here and throw me off this. Like, well, I
Yeah,
can't do that. Are you kidding? Are you crazy? Kid, are you crazy? Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Hangman's another one. Hangman would be an interesting match.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, dude, Jake Hager.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not
Hager would be
bad.
interesting.
That's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's guys he could wrestle on that card. It's just a matter of how they want to use him. If you're not going to put him in a world title picture, I don't know. 'Cause, I mean, it kind of doesn't make sense to do anything other than put the title on him.
I mean, does it kind of feel like you're trading the top you're trading the top New York Yankee to Boston at the height of his career? Does it kind of feel like that? Like, nah, we can't do that. Our crowd wouldn't accept him. They'd pop for him the first time, but he
They you lose a part of your crowd with that because
yeah.
you're gonna stop all of the development you're doing for other guys
Hmm.
that you had already started building up in the main eventers to make him a main eventer immediately. And for some fans, they're just not gonna want to see that.
Yeah, it does seem to be very contradictory to what that company's been trying to build for the past 2 years. Um, I think one of the best ways maybe to take this home if possible, because there's again he's an onion, kids. Is how I think of him. He's just very complex. Because there's so many layers to him. This idea, Phil, that people get mad at Brock. Oh, they're so mad. He doesn't like wrestling. He just wants the money. Wait, Brock's coming back. Oh, we know what's going to happen here. He's going to win again. He wins all the time. I hate this guy. God, I'm so tired of this. I'm sick of this Brock Lesnar stuff. Dude, I know you've heard this. I hate this so much. God, I hate it's the same old German, 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 German. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. God, I hate this. I hate this so much. I don't hear anybody hating on Vince for this. Like, this guy's not booking his own matches. He's not. Dude, I sit here in disillusionment that we still can't wrap our heads around the idea that Brock's not running his career here. Does he have some say? I'm sure he does. If he's a smart businessman, obviously he does. But dude, the
Yeah.
idea of that it's his fault, Phil, that kills me, man.
No, I mean I think the only reason that it looks that way is because again you're positioning him as this guy that hates the product, and it's kind of like you're trying to get you're trying to get heat on the guy, and it's not heat on him as in I want to boo him as a wrestler. It's I don't want to see him. I don't want him on my TV.
Yeah, I think people get that confused because it is the same shtick every time he's there. What about the idea of the argument that, yeah, that's true. All that's true. He does do the same stuff, but he's a tough guy. He's the real deal. He's a real cowboy. He's not this pretend stuff. He doesn't have to pull punches, and he's not what they do most of the time. He's not what a lot of the bigger companies don't do most of the time. He's not an entertainer. He's a wrestler. I mean, dude, feel for guys like us who are wrestling fans and not necessarily sports entertainment fans. I mean, there's some truth to that. He's not. I mean, if you want to call him a sports entertainer, fine, whatever. But like, that's not really what he is. He's the old school, cinch him up, shoot if you got to, kind of pro wrestler. That's what he is. I mean, how come he doesn't get more love for that?
I think it's because also it just is who he is as a person outside. He's so private, and he's so you're not gonna see him. You're not gonna see a guy like Brock doing like fan podcasts or doing like all
Right.
these interviews with like outlets outside of what WWE gives him. And because of that, he's just not going to enamor fans, and he's not gonna be seen as this, you know, fan favorite or darling in the same way that some other people are. I mean, the guy has no internet presence. Just like once he's done, he's gone.
All right.
It's not like he's gone, and you see him on Twitter tweeting things. It's like we don't really even know anything about him outside of some small details. It's like not like you're gonna jump on Twitter tomorrow and even see something like Brock going, "Oh well, you know, huge Milwaukee Bucks fan, go Bucks, love their Giannis Antetokounmpo." Like just so, and I mean, I think that's a big part of it. It's like there's not really anything to latch on with him other than his wrestling character, and so when you make that his wrestling character, I can't even combat it with, okay, I know this about Brock, and I know that's not what kind of guy he is. We don't really know that.
And like by living that life, you're not really giving anybody anything to hate, really, at all. But you're also not giving them anything to love either. So yeah, they don't have a way to connect with you. He's kind of like the Sean Connery of the wrestling business. Like Sean Connery was an award-winning actor and one of the best of all time, in my opinion. But when the camera was turned off, he went back to his life. He didn't want any part of the glitz and glamour and the let's do the talk
No,
show circuit and all that. That's not him. You're right.
and he just doesn't have a presence outside of it. And I think that's why some fans, if you don't already connect with Brock, um, for wrestling reasons, you have no real reason to connect with him at all. And so I think that's why some people might not appreciate him, maybe like he should have. And I mean, that's just the name of the game because everything right now has an internet presence. And so,
Yeah.
if you are in this era, you kind of have to, well, I won't say have to, but it kind of behooves you to have some kind of internet presence at least. I mean, and I'm not saying I want Brock to have that. I don't want that to be missed because I have no interest in logging on and seeing Brock's opinions on
Right.
Twitter. No thanks.
Right. Because
But
I may not like what I see.
right. So, but I just think that that's part of it. I mean, when you look at Becky Lynch's rise, a big part of Becky Lynch's rise is just how present she was on Twitter
Yeah.
and how she managed to navigate both doing the character work and being present for fans online.
So I'm going to hit you with this because it occurs to me as we're uh, talking about this. So not years from now, but now people are me Undertaker at a signing or whatever. Taker, man, you're part of my childhood. You inspired me, and I know that you give back to the business, and I always respect that. I respect you for that. And I remember this match and this match, and I was there that night when you brought the house lights up, and I was there that night when you summoned lightning from the ceiling. I was there that night when the casket opened, and I know that you really love this business, and I'm telling you, man, I know you get this all the time, but you're my hero. When Dusty was still living, hey, man, Dusty was the common man, son of a plumber, came up among the people. He wasn't flashy. He might have wore a mink coat, but he worked hard to get that mink coat. He worked hard to get that nice car. He didn't have anything handed to him. He had to earn it. And it's American dream. If you believe in the American dream, maybe it can happen for you. Um, Bret Hart. Bret Hart didn't get anything handed to him. Doesn't matter who his father was or who his family was. He had to work hard to get his way. He didn't become the hit man the first year. In the first 2 months, he didn't pin the top guy in the first year. He had to earn the right to be called the hit man. He had to earn that WWE title, and people respect that and admire him, and he's got a place in their hearts. The sunglasses, the image, the hair. Austin, same deal. I mean, Stone Cold, man, you're anti-authority, but you love the business, and it's, again, Phil, the underlying theme here is you love the business, and you appreciate the fans, and you respect your peers, you respect the guys you worked with, you've always shown love, all this stuff. I mean, the Rock, same deal, and even though his career is a lot shorter than all these guys, man, Punk, same thing. No matter if his career was shorter too, it doesn't matter. Just this idea of, hey, you represent this for me, and I'll never forget when this happened. Not just now, but years from now. Is anyone making any sort of connection with Brock other than I remember that guy, man. He did a bunch of suplexes and stuff, and like nobody ever really beat him in junk, and he was a beast. I mean, do people talk about him in the same breath? Well, the company did as Andre. Well, Andre wasn't here all the time, and he's a special attraction. Brock's a special attraction. Don't ever try to compare Andre the Giant to Brock Lesnar again. It's two totally different people. People had a special love in their heart for Andre, not just fans, but the boys and the girls. Dude, is anybody ever going to talk about Brock Lesnar like this? Ever?
I think possibly. Um, I don't think that they're gonna talk about him exactly in the same breath as like Undertaker, but I think for some fans that they love Brock, and I know it because I see it out there. I see some fans that really enjoyed the Brock stuff, but now are they gonna approach him? Probably not. He's not made himself an approachable guy. You're not going to see him doing signings and stuff like that.
Right.
It's just not who he is. Um, and again, I think that's why some people just don't connect with him because he's just not. He's not a guy that is open and approachable. He's not a guy that looks social. It's just not who he is. But I do think some fans enjoy what he brings to wrestling. I think some fans will always look fondly on either his first run or his return, and they're always going to look at it like I remember where I was. Yeah. When you look back at some of those clips when he first came back that night in F5 Cena, and how some people in the crowd were reacting to him, and mimicking his entrance with him. And so yeah, I think some people will connect. It's just on a different level.
The crazy guy with the black and white shirt, that's the one that they always show in the replays. He's a huge Brock fan. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dude, he's only 43. It's not like he's 50. I mean, he's, 7 years till he hits 50. I mean, how much more time do you think? Is it up to him? I mean, as long as he's in shape, and he seems to stay fairly healthy from everything I've seen and read about him. I mean, we know what it was like for Taker to come back for one match per year was the hardest thing in the world because his body had been through so much. Brock's arguably not had the kind of physical turmoil that Taker had with constant on the road years after years after years. I mean, how many more years do you think we've got of this guy?
I have no idea. It's got to be up to him. I think as long as he wants to keep working, and I mean, he works a schedule, so it's plausible. He works a schedule he wants to work, so it's plausible. You keep bringing him back as like a, guy that you can use for big four pay-per-views or special attraction matches. It's possible, but I just don't think he needs to be champion to do that. You can do things with him and bring him back for big matches that have nothing to do with your world title picture. You don't have to put everything on hold to do that.
Right. Hall of Fame anytime soon? And when it happens, do you think he'll finally break character and give an acceptance speech where he's humble for a change, or no?
I cannot imagine what a Brock Hall of Fame speech looks like. Like I just don't know what that looks like.
Well, he can't talk. I mean, that's he can never talk. He still can't talk. It's pretty awful.
I've seen people that say his promos are not bad. He
Oh,
did have stuff where his character stuff was good, but as a promo guy, I never thought he was great.
nah, he can't put words together and make you feel anything. Remember that promo he cut by himself in that dark room talking about Cena pissing down his leg?
What?
And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah,
what? He just
yeah,
kept saying, they kept bleeping it out. I'm like, oh my God, this is a train wreck. Why'd they keep the camera rolling for this?
yeah. His voice doesn't match what you think he would sound like.
It's like Tyson. It's like Tyson. His voice doesn't match.
So yeah. Maybe he just stands out there and Paul does his acceptance speech for him the whole time.
Dude, dude, I was going to pitch that to you and say, yeah, do it, just have Heyman do it. Have we missed the Mike Tyson comparison through this whole show? Is he the closest thing we can think of to a Mike Tyson in the pro wrestling world, where he just seemed to come from nowhere and took the world by storm and won these titles and needed a confidant or needed a man to guide his career, and by himself he was kind of a train wreck, but as long as he had help around him, I mean, it's kind of feeling very similar to me here.
It is similar. Uh, he never had that Buster Douglas moment though. Like
Very true.
most maybe closest to his Buster Douglas moment was that shooting star press.
Right.
Whoever advised him to do that just gave him some terrible, terrible advice.
Supposedly didn't he nail that before?
Yeah, supposedly he did it, but they kept trying to encourage him to do it in a match, and I'm just like, he just doesn't need
My
to do that.
God.
Like
Yeah.
it just doesn't match his character. He just doesn't need to do it.
I mean, Rey Mysterio has an easier time picking up Big Show than Brock Lesnar does hitting a shooting star off the top rope. I mean, much easier time. Yeah, I don't know, man. The final analysis, I don't think the book's closed. I think we've still got more to come from this guy, for better or for worse. It depends on what your viewpoint is, and he's probably going to get hate regardless.
No, of course.
Yeah. Phil, we'll probably revisit this at some point, depending on what happens in the rest of this calendar year. It could be something insane. So I'll give you another two-parter here. First I'll ask you this, then I'll ask you to give me your last word. So, does Brock Lesnar come back in the fall this year, and does he have the belt by the end of the year? And what's your final word on this guy, at least for now?
I think there's a very good chance that he comes back by August, September, in time for SummerSlam. I think this is about the best time for him to come back if he's going to. Um, if he comes back, I think he'll definitely be champion by the end of the year. Especially if he comes to Raw, because there's really nobody to challenge him on Raw other than Lashley. I mean, final word on him. I think Lesnar is, a once in a lifetime athlete, once in a lifetime wrestling character. Um, Definitely a polarizing character. But I mean, you can't discount, the great runs that this guy has had. I mean, yeah, you just can't discount just how dominant he's been, and you know what he's brought to wrestling in terms of crossover appeal.
I agree with everything about that, and I second that, everything you just said. But I also come back with the fact that, as we said before, he does not have that connection, and in the long run, is that going to matter? Maybe not. Does that mean he won't be mentioned in the same breath as as even Goldberg, who and I know he doesn't have, like you said, he can't do what Brock can do, never could, and I get that, I totally get that. But Goldberg has a connection. He's came out and said, "I love the business for the first time ever, and my kids involved, and my family's involved, and I love the fans." And you know, maybe one day a Goldberg episode will be coming, because man, this guy's done so much for like children's charities and stuff, personal appearances. I mean, he cares so much about his fans, about people. I mean, he really does seem to be a genuine guy. No one can say that about Brock. And maybe Brock's the salt of the earth. But to your point from earlier, we don't know because he's never going to let anybody in. So I don't know that he'll ever be mentioned in the same breath. Whether or not that's fair, maybe not for me to say. But I think in terms of the wrestling population of us out here, he's always going to be polarizing for that fact. Maybe if for no other reason, that fact alone. Whether or not that matters to anyone remains to be seen. Whether or not it matters to him at all, it's anybody's guess. We'll see what the future holds. And that is Brock Lesnar. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.